instead of them coming in to review the ideas that are already in progress. Basically, just get the input somewhere else where it doesn't slow you down, but also helps you to work towards velocity in other ways.
What is going on, certified homies? Welcome to another episode of From A to B. You have Shiva, and I'm joined by... we just went over it too. I wrote it down. Hold on. Gertrud Vahtra. Nope, that wasn't even
It's close enough.
How do you pronounce it?
Gertrud Vahtra.
Gertrud, yeah. I can't roll my R that way. So that's just biologically speaking, I am incapable of pronouncing names. That's the reason. First of all, we've been friends for a while working at Spiro. I think the first time I met you was at EXL. It was like 3 years ago. I've always been a huge fan of you personally. And you're not only an operations lead at Spiro for the whole EU team, you're also the certified badass at Spiro. Is that correct?
I guess so. That's the first time I hear that term, but I'll take the title.
That's the going from what I've heard inside.
All
so
right.
Gertrud is a certified badass and operations lead. I think that you should.
I'll take it.
I didn't see that in your LinkedIn profile, so you should probably update that.
Maybe I should add it.
I usually end the episode with shit you need to know, but I'm going to throw you for a loop and lead with shit you need to know, and then we'll go into the topic. So shit you need to know comes courtesy of Gerda, Vogt-Thomas, certified homie who's been on the podcast before, who decided one day to wake up and choose violence. I don't think I've ever been more triggered by a LinkedIn. Actually, that's true. Not true. I get triggered by everything on LinkedIn. But this post especially triggered me. So her post was common CRO issues that seem so absurd on paper that shouldn't exist or should be easily solvable, but still happen on 99% of projects. Did you see this post?
Yeah, I believe seen it on LinkedIn. Yeah.
So some of the things she mentioned were most of the traffic being on mobile, but nobody on the team has ever looked at the mobile experience. Just shaking your head like, oh my God, what a absolute pain in the ass. It's bonus points when you have CRO teams or CRO agencies or people who say they do CRO and their site is not mobile optimized. Have you seen that?
Yeah, unfortunately, too many times.
If you can't fix your own car, why would I trust you as a mechanic, That's basic housekeeping stuff. Yeah. Another one she commented on was 5-figure ad spend a month, but the average time on landing page is 9 seconds and 50% don't scroll on the page and the conversion rate's somewhere around 1%. I'm sure you've dealt with this in your line at Spiro as certified badass, people who are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on landing pages and are maybe going to block all of your tests because they don't like it.
Yeah, I think it's quite common. I think the problem is that landing page don't get the attention that they need in terms of doing research and validation. People go there with ideas and things that they want to implement in there, but yeah, it doesn't get the attention it needs.
She calls out another thing on here. Website is built for and run by brand rather than UX, and then everyone's looking at conversion rates and seeing why no one's converting. Yeah,
that's also a very common occurrence that I've seen with clients and websites.
Have you dealt with that personally, having to talk to a brand person to be your opinion isn't fact?
I think it's really difficult working with clients where you want to maintain a good client relationship and then also tell them what's not working. But I've had a lot of situations where we have research that tells us that we need to rework the headline or, images on the site because they don't represent what the customers are looking for or what the brand represents to them. And then when you take those ideas, then oftentimes they get blocked because, oh no, we have our other priorities with branding or, we have a different vision. So I guess my problem with that is not listening to your customers or the research that comes from it. And I think that's a very common problem that comes in other areas as well.
Yeah, absolute pain in the ass to have to deal with people who are so dense like that. She has 10 other things, but the last one I'll end on is the mother of all bottlenecks, no clear owner for experimentation and website activities. Everyone's kind of doing something, but no one knows who's doing what or who's supposed to approve designs or implement or test, who owns strategy, etc. That's why I wanted to lead with shit you need to know, because that's the topic for today that I really wanted to geek out with you on is ultimately, these are several reasons why you're not getting tests approved. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper into that. Do you have any stories of you being in a spot where you're trying to get a test approved and you're just having like a stakeholder blocked, or no, that never happens in your line of work ever?
Oh, I have too many stories, but I'll just take one of them. And I had a recent example where there was a homepage test and it was focused on localization.
Like location, translation localization?
Yeah, so making sure that the content, the language, and the images are relevant for that location where we want to target users. And in that case, it was UK. And it took over 2 months and probably over 20 different design revisions to get that test live. It was quite a painful process. And I think the problem really there was that there were too many cooks in the kitchen, and people came in looking at the kind of final design and they started bringing new ideas. And there wasn't really good alignment with some other stakeholders on why we're testing them, what's the kind of problem, what we're trying to solve for. And people were just dumping different copy ideas and like, let's change this word in this copy, or let's change this word in the other copy. And it ended in a way that the headline changed a lot, and it actually went back to the original idea after 20 different revisions. And it was just a lot of wasted effort and a lot of wasted hours in there. There's a few reasons why that happened. One is that, as I mentioned, people don't have visibility to why we are testing it. So they just see like, hey, this is an area where I can pitch my own ideas or bring my own ideas to fruition. Another one is that the person we were working with, who was kind of leading that on the client side, they perhaps took too many opinions on. We want people to be able to pitch ideas for the testing program and feel like everyone is empowered, but it shouldn't be in a way that everyone has an equal say, and it's probably really bad to say, but the person who leads the program should have a final say and should be able to push through and work towards velocity.
I want to go a little bit deeper into this because I think there are human psychology reasons why we as CROs can be like, dude, fuck these guys, they're stupid. Why don't they like testing? Like, that's not helpful to anyone, right?
I wouldn't say that. I might think that, but sure.
I mean, I think it, and I have said it. So it's like, we all feel that.
Yeah.
So I think it's at a top line level, I think we could all understand, like, why don't they just understand that 1 + 1 = 2? It's easy. Just look at the math. But the reality is they're human beings, and human beings are just weird, irrational creatures. So if you had to put yourself in the shoes of those people who are perhaps adding extra input or delaying things, if you had to steelman, if you had to steelman their positions to their feedback, what would be their POV? Or did you know what their point of view was? Like, what were the things they were saying as to like why they didn't want to do it?
Unfortunately, I did not have direct access to those people. So there were people that I have never even met or talked to that were, expressing their opinions and feedback. But what I assume what could have happened is because we just very recently started the experimentation program, a lot of people probably came on and saw like, hey, we can actually change things. I have 100 ideas of what I can change or what I want to do on the website. And they should have the place to do that, or the right to do that, but perhaps not in a place where there is a hypothesis where we have a clear plan on it. Perhaps they should have a chance to do it somewhere else. Inviting them to ideation sessions or giving them problems to then find solutions to, that is amazing, that is great, but not when we are already hands deep and planning to launch test next week or in design phase. One
thing I think that is pretty critically important is lack of alignment strategically in what the business wants to do. And like, it's really stupid and it sucks. And I'm not trying to be super doomer about it, but I kind of am. Experimentation isn't going to solve a lack of business structure and focus, right? Would you agree with that?
I agree. There are some things that go underneath the CRO umbrella that can help with the focus. So general alignment with the metrics and goals that matter. If, different teams, different people have like different understandings of what matters to business, you can get alignment on those goals and metrics and then, make sure everyone's on the same page. And then also using research to identify the top customer problems can bring that focus. Then you understand what are the top themes, the problems that everyone should focus on, and everyone can then come in to pitch ideas. So I don't believe experimentation itself helps with it, but I think there are frameworks and there are other methods underneath the CRO umbrella that can help bring that in and make sure everyone's kind of aligned on the strategy. Yeah.
I think you're right. I'm just thinking about this now, like, it's the same way in CRO. It shouldn't be on CRO to have to politic, but we just have to do it because no one else is going to fucking do it for us. So it's a sad reality of the world, unfortunately, but we get it. We know what we signed up for. We get it. But I don't know. I want to chew on this more. Like, why is it on experimentation? Like, I don't disagree with the ritual that you have in your, I'll plug it now, your experimentation talk. That was fabulous, and it should win all the awards if I have anything to do with it or say with it. But doing like a strategy, a mapping, metric mapping workshops, getting people aligned, I think this is fantastic. Like, aren't you a shitty CEO if you already have done that thing and you don't already push that top-down alignment from the exec team? Like, why is that on CRO? That's so stupid.
100%. It should come from top down. The areas of focus, the strategies, the OKRs, it should come top down, but most of the time it doesn't. So I think those frameworks and workshops and processes we have all invented in the CRO landscape, I think those are just ways to make sure we can move forward in some ways, and to make sure that we're just not throwing things at the wall.
I hate this. I hate that CRO just has to keep on growing beyond its bucket. I guess it's maybe good, because if we are the ones at the driver's seat, right? We are the ones forcing the change, driving the change, then maybe that's a better opportunity for leadership to recognize the value of experimentation and get more of that buy-in with experimentation at the driver's seat, not with the CEO at the driver's seat, especially if everyone's aligned in the director level and across functions and it's just the CEO who's not on board. I guess that's almost like a mutiny, isn't it?
Yeah, in theory, yeah, it will be good because it shines light on the CRO, the experimentation team. But I think the problem, and it kind of connects to this theme, is that in some companies, CRO is kind of like this black box and not everyone has visibility to it. We also have to do a really good job at communicating the learnings and the things we're doing to the wider teams and the stakeholders higher up, to make sure that people get excited about it and make sure that they understand the value of it. And that's how you get buy-in easier as well and make sure things move forward.
I think ultimately it comes down to CRO just having to jello, or I don't know. Have you seen Ghostbusters?
The old one or the new one?
The old one.
Yeah,
the new ones
I have.
It's not Ghostbusters. It's something else. But like these little marshmallow things that clump together and just take over the whole fucking city, right? CRO has to kind of do that, because there's so many literal jobs to be done in like the professional workspace. And it seems like other people aren't taking it, like the metric mapping thing or metric importance, however we want to call it. Like, again, that should be set at the leadership level. But when it's not, fuck it, CRO, we're just going to come in and do it. And I think I'm sorry, I'm kind of like derailing here a little bit, because I think ultimately it comes down to you're not getting test approved because you don't have that alignment. If at the top level of leadership you don't have that alignment, then go fucking figure it out and get it on your own. And that's effectively what you're saying here, is like conduct workshops, get this alignment, go talk to people and figure that out on your own. Because if you don't have that, then I think it's actually right that everyone who has an opinion can, I guess it's not right, it's logical that people can be like, well, why is your thing more important than mine? Because no one has alignment. So I guess it's logical. But the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was not getting test approved. We talked about this before, like cooks in the kitchen. I talked to Andre Morris about this a couple episodes ago, where he said the average, everyone I talked to is so cultured, and I forgot his exact reference, but he said something like the average of Switzerland is flat or something. Fuck, I forgot. Something basically that says like, if everyone has input, even the smart ideas will get brought down to an average level. And that's where there's sometimes a challenge of having too many cooks in the kitchen, which could slow you down. You're not getting approval because you have to get 10 people approved in different stages, and you're always chasing approvals rather than actually running the test. I think on the flip side, those people might want to be involved in experimentation, and to box them out and create this lack of transparency can be problematic. Is that part of your workshop or your thoughts on like, how do you balance the many stakeholders where you want to involve everyone, but you don't want there to be so many people, so many opinions, and so many blockers that you slow it down?
For each stage, there should be 1 to 2 maximum approvers. Like if a test design gets done and people are okay with the copy and whatnot, there shouldn't be 5 people come and interview the design. That's really going to slow you down. It's not good. If you have a lot of people in the company who are very interested in experimentation and they really want to get involved, then the way I would handle that is redirect them elsewhere. So instead of them coming in to review that, yes, they're already in progress, give them a different avenue to share those ideas. So, give them the problems, tell them like, hey, this is what we're struggling with. This is what the customers are saying. Do you have any other ideas on how to solve for it? And basically, just get their input somewhere else where it doesn't slow you down, but also helps you to work towards velocity in other ways.
Yeah, I love this redirect. There's some parallels to like training with dogs where like if a dog is really reactive and looking at something, you're supposed to redirect them towards something else.
And it works with kids as well. So, I think it works with anyone really.
I keep on getting to this idea that like most of our stakeholders are fucking children and infants, and we have to just treat them as such. Like, give them candy, give them shiny objects. If they're playing too much with one thing, like take it away and give them something else. Just treat stakeholders as kids. I think that's what Gertrud saying.
No, that's not like me at all.
I can't directly quote that. Okay, fair enough.
No, sorry, that's your quote.
That's definitely my quote. At least it's more like there are basic things you could do. It's not like this super advanced, build a 300-page slide deck to convince a stakeholder. There's some very basic things of like, hey, your point's valid. It's heard. Ship's already left the station and we don't want to slow ourselves down. However, we would love your input here and give them the opportunity to come back. And experimentation's cyclical too, right? Like it's like a roller coaster, just jumping on the next one and just keep on going. We're plenty of room for you.
And I think there's a lot of different activities you can do. Some are more fun than others, but you can have like exercises where you do votes on test ideas. You give them a test that you ran and you get people to vote like, do you think it won or not? And you'll get people excited about it. And then it's different ideation workshops, whether it's like a heuristic review, whether it's some kind of a data to action workshop where you provide the data and then get people to, add their ideas there. There's so many different ways you can get people involved where it doesn't slow you down. So I think there's lots of options there.
All right, I'm going to ask you a challenging question.
Okay.
Stakeholders are busy, right?
Yes.
Workshops are expensive in terms of time cost. It's a lot of people in one room at a time to conduct that thing. How do you balance the two? Because I don't think most people would disagree with the value of the workshops. But how do you balance, or at least how do you position that? I mean, it's the same thing with experimentation, right? I think experimentation in its own right is you're slowing it down a little bit to validate that the path you're walking is the correct path. Logically, some people might be like, nah, it's too slow. I want to go fast. And there's logic. I get it. There's logic. But would you rather slow it down a little bit and know you're right, or run really fast over a cliff? Most people would slow it down.
I don't have a direct answer to you, but I have a question that I want to bounce back to you.
You're going to answer a question with a question.
Yeah.
I like it.
Is the time effort for workshops more expensive than having your roadmap slowed down by having too many opinions and not being able to ship as fast?
That's very fair. That's a great answer. That's a great answer.
Or is it more expensive than, tens of useless meetings to align on a specific design or a copy version, or, to just have stand-ups where people don't feel like they can contribute? There's trade-offs, but I don't think it will slow you down. You don't need to have those every week or every day, right? You can do once a month and people can help with ideas and feel like they're involved in the program. The downside of not doing it, or the downside of not having that alignment, is that you will lose a lot more money and a lot more time in other places.
Yeah, I wonder if you could even like get super passive aggressive and be like, here's the expensive meetings that we've had going through 15 iterations and quantify it was 20 hours of meetings to get this one test approved, when we could have just done the workshop and got alignment for everything moving forward, right?
Exactly. So
do you recommend the passive aggressive way?
Well, it depends on the person. I have a feeling that you would choose that for me.
100% yes, I would.
I think it also depends what kind of people you're working with. Like there's cultural differences. Like people in the States might communicate differently than maybe people in Eastern Europe would. We
communicate better. You could just say that we're better at using words in the US. Yeah.
If that helps you sleep at night.
I have a bunch of folks in the EU listening to this podcast. No shade.
Sure. I'm not going to comment.
Okay, this is actually really interesting. I love this idea of, it's almost, I have so many examples in my head, but I love this idea that, yes, it is expensive. You're not going to run from the idea that, in fact, like a metric setting meeting, a goal mapping meeting, a problem statement brainstorm, like any workshop that you have will be expensive. But I guess maybe point one would be very clearly explain or highlight the value of that workshop. I'm curious, like, have you guys actually done, like at Spiro, do you guys do any like meetings mapped to a workshop? Like, it'd be really cool to like connect the tests run from a workshop, or the strategy defined from a workshop and the success from that, like literally mapping it to that meeting, because then that would show very clear value in that meeting to continue to do that, you know?
It's a good question you're raising. It's actually something we are working on right now to improve the system.
Of course you guys are.
Always. Yeah. But so far,
it makes sense.
What makes sense to kind of close that loop? One of the ideas that has been discussed is mapping everything out in Airtable. So that's, our go-to tool. And if in Airtable you map out like all the research sources, how that connects to observations and actions, then you can also map out those workshops that you run, how, what research you use in those workshops, and then link those to the test ideas. So if you're very good in your project management tool and you link out everything in there from like data to action and experiments, then technically you should be able to see how many experiments came from a specific workshop. And if you put all the results in Airtable as well, then you can also see the results and the value from those workshops. At the end of the day, it depends on how good you are at reporting everything and making sure that all the information is updated in your project management tool.
Is it something to think about around you not getting buy-in in your experimentation because your experimentation program management, your database just sucks and there's no visibility? Like, you talking so nerdy about here's the set strategy sessions we have, it's linked, here are themes. Like, this is, I don't want to say it's table stakes, but it's pretty mid-level to mid-high level of maturity for experimentation programs when you're at that level of conducting not only experiments, but all the metadata and all the rituals to get to that point, right? You're at least 3 out of 5 in the maturity scale. Is it something that perhaps your tests aren't getting approved because your experimentation is seen as a black box, because you don't have these data points? It almost seems like what you're proposing to people is spaghetti testing. Like, I have an idea, ad hoc. When if you presented it more formally with like, here's a database of, even if honestly, like, I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but even if your prioritization framework's bullshit, if you have a bunch of AA tests, if it looks like your program is incredibly well thought through with strategy and rituals and tagging, it gives that air of confidence that maybe people aren't approving your tests because they don't think you're thinking of everything. But if you give the confidence that you have thought through everything, you involved all the stakeholders, you've gotten all the inputs, then there's less friction and people let you run the tests.
I would say yes, but of course it also depends on the quality part. Like, how good is the data you're presenting? Is it like thorough? Have you done your investigations? But
okay, let me an example of this. I talked to Nima last episode, and it's so stupid, but this is so true. If I'm an in-house person at a company, for some reason, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, consultants are seen as much higher in terms of like intelligence or smartness or validity of ideas compared to the in-house people, even if it's the same fucking idea. I don't know if you've dealt with that. I've dealt with that my entire career being in-house, where I'll be saying something for 3 years and then a consultant will say the same fucking thing on LinkedIn. And then my CEO's like, oh my God, what a great idea. I'm like, I've been saying this for 3 years. So that's why, like, I wonder if the idea is behind it that, like, if you're not projecting that confidence, if you're not projecting that thoughtfulness of your experimentation program, then people don't have, if you're not projecting it, then why would people reciprocate with confidence in you? You know what I mean?
No, definitely. I see your point. And I do think it's a good point. I think you need to have the confidence, and I think you need to be thorough with the work you do.
You should be.
Yeah. Then it's easier to get those ideas approved.
Have you dealt with that, like being client side? I mean, you're at the scenario of like, theoretically you're more trusted than me because you're a consultant and I'm just a fucking in-house person who's saying the crazy shit. Have you dealt with that where maybe clients have seen what you do and they don't have confidence in your individual decision making, which I think is stupid. Like, you're a smart fucking person. Of course, everything you do comes with a line of research, data, thoughtfulness, strategy, talking to everyone that you need to. Has someone approached you kind of ignoring that or showing lack of confidence? And how have you addressed that? Have you gone through that scenario at all?
I've had those situations, but I'm not really sure what the kind of reasoning there is, why I have had the situations.
I mean, people suck. That's the easy answer. It's just people suck.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of times I've also worked with clients where I have seen that internal ideas are also easier to get approved or to get them right.
Oh, you've seen the
I've
flip.
seen the flip, and I think there is a little bit of like different opinions, and people being feeling like my gut feel says this, or my gut feel says that this test is not going to win. And there's a little bit of education that needs to be done there, and that's where you have to kind of go back to those frameworks and make sure that those tests are based on research and so on. You talked about confidence a little bit. I do have a feeling that when I was early in my career, and then when I pitched ideas, so I tried to talk about things, and I didn't sound confident myself, I think it was harder to convince other people of that. But now that I know what I'm talking about, I have seen it in action, I have seen what works and what doesn't, it is much easier, and I don't have those issues as much anymore. So I think as a person who works in experimentation, if you pitch ideas, you have to have that confidence yourself and really believe those ideas that you're pitching.
I still deal with it, by the way. Just for anyone listening to the podcast, like, it's a normal human reaction to sometimes not totally be confident. In fact, I think we are more inclined to be less confident in our decision making because we are always aggressively seeking more data to validate our own decision making, right? Versus some person who's like, the only data they need is cherry picking a LinkedIn article that some other person is saying about a thing that confirms their preconceived notions. And that's all the evidence they need to be confident. Versus us, because we are gravitating towards this field of being more data driven, we have to be extra confident with the data and everything that we're doing. Otherwise, maybe we won't have that air of confidence. And that might fight against us in the confidence, or at least the presentation of confidence for getting tests approved, that the leader who has no data but is super confident in their opinion will override our not confident, but actually pretty data driven backed test idea,
I think it's a really good point, because I think in our jobs, we have to kind of question everything. Do we have enough data for this? Like, are we doing the right thing? Is this the right approach, etc.? Because, we want to make sure that we are thorough and we're testing the right things. And then you work with a client, or you work with someone who's like, hey, I saw this competitor do this. This is going to win. We're going to do the same. And then, it kind of throws you off a little bit. But yeah, I think it's just how we are wired, I suppose, to question ourselves and everything, really.
I'm being so negative on this episode, Gertrude. I don't know why. I'm sorry for anyone listening to this episode. Like, I genuinely love our job. It's just maybe I needed a little bit of therapy to talk to you about this. But
no, but I think there's quite a few positive solutions we have talked about. So it's not all that negative. I think it's something that everyone deals with. I've talked with a lot of people in experimentation, and I heard an example the other day where someone pitches like 30 ideas per month, and like 10 of them get approved. And if you think about the 20 ideas that don't get approved, that can be quite disheartening at times. But the solutions that we have discussed, getting alignment, making sure that people, see the research, they have other avenues to pitch for ideas and get involved, and some of those other things, I think there's still light at the end of the tunnel, and there's a lot of ways we can try to move past those issues as well.
That's pretty interesting that you pitch, what was it? You said someone pitched 30 ideas and they got 10 approved?
Per month, approximately. Yeah. I can't say who, but yeah.
No, I know. That's wild. Like a 10%. Oh, no, sorry, that's horrible math. Holy shit, that's not 10%. That's 33%.
I thought you're a data guy, Shiva.
We'll just keep on moving on. 33% approval of test idea. That feels so bad, right?
Do you know what? I think mine isn't too far away from that as well. And I don't know if that's like, just comparing like client versus in-house.
Okay, let's go into that. I think that's really interesting. This is just random data that I'm curious about. I don't think there's ever going to be a scientific way to get this done, because in-house, I mean, I love and prefer in-house for other reasons that we've recorded previous episodes about it. But like, I'm not sure my rate's that much different. Now that I think about it, I don't think it's that much different. There are ways that I try and approach shortening that, which is just take executive ideas and just run it, because then that'll increase my rates or whatever. But like, that's so interesting. I want to go into this more specifically. Like, is there something to client side versus in-house, or I guess versus like fractional or whatever? Is there something unique to anywhere that CRO person is sitting as to why you would not get tests approved? That, like I said before, when you're in-house, sometimes some leaders trust consultants versus in-house people more for reasons that I'll never understand. I think that's something that sometimes fights against the in-house people. But I think on the flip side, when you're client side, I'm sure you've dealt with this. And this is the reason why I prefer in-house too. There are some meetings that you sitting client side, Gertrud, are just not privy to. There's business conversations, there's QBR decks across cross-functional teams that you as a consultant in the way you sit will just never be privy to. I guess it's logical that perhaps they might not be approving your test ideas because they think you don't have all the information, but also in a strange way, they don't want to give you access to all that information to help you do your job better anyway. Do you agree with that?
That definitely plays a big role. You're not able to have all the context that your client has. They also kind of live and breathe the product, right? So they will always know a little bit more about the product themselves. But yes, there's a lot of conversations that you will miss out on. Saying that, I don't think that this is a unique struggle. I think this is something that everyone in experimentation struggles with. Maybe not with the 33% rate, but I think everyone has the problem of not getting all their ideas approved. And I think, we have listed a lot of those reasons already. There's like different opinions and, lack of alignment, but it's just something that is normal and something that we just kind of have to work with.
Anyone who's listening to this episode, drop a comment or DM us. What is your test approval rate? Because that's not something that I've ever seen tracked. You guys are you?
I don't track it. No. We don't track it. That was just like an example from a discussion. But now that you said it,
I kind of want to know.
People, we should be tracking this. But also, if anyone comments that their approval rate is 100%, I'll be very, very hurt. But
well, it's bullshit. It's like the same people who are like, oh, we lifted conversion rate by 7 billion%. Like, no, you fucking didn't. Like, no.
But I'm very curious to hear. Yes.
But I would love, you're going to have an internal Spiro competition of like who has more test approvals on like a person basis.
Yeah, we could do that. But then the question is...
That's a KPI of like who's more likable.
But the question is like, if the percentage is too high or too low, those could both be, bad signs. If the percentage is too high, then it means you're not being disruptive enough or you're not, pointing at those areas that might be uncomfortable for the client enough. If it's too low, then yes, possibly your ideas are just not very good. But I think it would be good to establish what's the like kind of safe zone that you should be aiming for.
Yeah, this is a fun activity. I'm really interested about this. I've never tracked this before. Also, like, could you imagine an Airtable if you just had like a box that's like, was this test ever approved or not? This could get really passive. This is a whole passive aggressive episode, but that could get even more passive aggressive of like just having all of these receipts to show to leadership to be like, you're approving 2 like tests a month. That's not even building the damn thing. You're just approving the concept of 2 or 10 or 33% or whatever.
Oh, so we do somewhat report on it at Spiro. In some QBRs, we mention how many ideas were pitched and how many ideas got by. So I think it's a good way to highlight, where you are putting more calories in. Is the problem that, you are being slowed down by development or design, or is it because, a lot of ideas are not getting approved? So it's definitely something that's good to highlight too.
One last thing I wanted to cover before we leave. We covered like workshops. We covered making people feel good about their test ideas and being super passive aggressive about reporting and not approvals of tests. Definitely be super passive aggressive. Gertrud approves of you being super passive aggressive.
No, I don't.
Have it on video.
I do not.
One last thing I wanted to cover with you was just this idea of, I love the idea of rice, dice, basically racy, daisy, whatever food, verb, thing that you want to do to basically say there are people who are accountable, informed, contribute. You set clear roles and expectations for people in certain processes. And I think that is a major unlock for getting tests approved or removing the blockers. That if we're part of a team with engineers, designers, brand, UX, and brand thinks they approve tests, UX thinks they approve tests, Zero thinks they approve tests, engineering's like, nah, fuck you guys. We'll actually put it live so we approve it. If no one's aligned with like who literally sits at the top of deciding what gets approved versus not, and you have the one person, then I think that's what leaves so much ambiguity, frustration, and a bunch of people. And I think that probably creates even more cooks in the kitchen. So I almost think that is like the nucleus of fixing a lot of these problems.
100%.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the best thing to do. It should be done at the start of every program or maybe revisited, a few times a year. Those matrices, they can really make sure that everyone potentially stays within the lane, and everyone who wants to be informed, they will be part of that loop as well. So yeah, 100% agree.
And you guys do that on the Spiro side, like as soon as the relationship starts, like that's the first thing you guys do, right? Like
on the kickoff day, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how I ever got any tests launched without that set. And I ran tests early in my career without it. It's okay, you get some random shit out, but and maybe this is the flip side of it. Like a couple episodes ago, we were talking about burnout and CRO. And sometimes if you are just getting so frustrated with your job and you're getting so burned out because of lack of accountability or lack of resources or whatever reasons, and you've tried things to improve the situation and you can't, then it might be time to switch your job because your talents aren't recognized for what they are. If you establish a DAISY and you're like, all right, I'm the chief person who approves tests, or maybe it's the director of UX or something else, and that's fine. We all agree to it. Either they're totally slowing you down or you're accountable for approving tests and everyone else continues to box out of that DAISY and reach beyond what is their actual box of accountability or whatever. It might be worth it to revisit if that's the position for you too. I don't want to keep on saying like, just keep on leaving your job, but like it sucks when you're in a position where you are set as the chief person approving tests and you set that in stone in DAISY or RACY or whatever. And then you just have people coming in and be like, nah, that ain't it. We're doing something else. Like that's a chief contributor to the burnout in that episode we talked about before. That's a major reason why. But I think like, even if that's not burning you out, if you're not getting tests approved because someone keeps on reaching out of their box and no one's keeping them in check, that almost might be representative of a culture that you might not be able to set. Yeah, I think you should still do the workshops, but what do you think?
If you have tried everything else, then maybe it is time to move on and see where talents be used elsewhere. I think there's a lot of options you can still do. So, if no one is kind of committing to that matrix, then it's kind of your role to put your foot down and be like, hey, no, this is what I'm responsible for. I would love to get your ideas, but can we do it over here? Like, again, that redirection part, right? So get them to go somewhere else. But I mean, if that doesn't help, if the workshops don't help, then I'm not sure what else can be done.
If you go into an interview talking about RACY DAISY and you're like talking about accountability and saying, look, I want to try and establish a RACY early on. I want to make sure that I know exactly where I sit. And you could start sussing out in the interview where you'll sit, because it might be that you're brought in as like an experimentation manager and really you're just literally just a data analyst, or you're just someone who like they expect you to look at best practices or whatever, like whatever bullshit that they expect you to do. But if you could suss out that DAISY, and I talked to this with Ben, like this is a high level, high order question to ask in an interview that actually employers love to hear. It's like, here's how I will fit in. Here's how I want to fit in. Here's how I'm thinking about fitting in, knowing that, well, you have designers, you have devs here, sit here. And if you can map it out and be like, I'm kind of thinking about this. Does it make sense? If you're going in the interview and they're like, yep, that's beautiful. We love it. We want you to fit exactly here. We want you to do exactly this. Then it's setting clear expectations. And you could have that shining green flag of like, this is going to be beautiful for me. Versus on the flip side, if you're like, I want to approve test ideas, and they're like, no, that's for brand. And you're like, all right, well, I want to provide strategy. And they're like, no, that's research. Then you're like, all right, well, then what do I do? Right? Like, what am I actually going to tactically do? And if tests aren't getting approved, that might actually reflect on you for not getting tests approved, even though you literally had no control to do it,
Yeah. No, I definitely get your point. Setting clear expectations at the start is the key there.
Cool. All right. Anything else, Gertrud, that you want to talk about regarding not getting tests approved? If you had to just end with like parting words of this is why you're not getting tests approved and this is what you should do about it. Besides, we already agreed that you said be super passive aggressive, talk about it all the time.
That's not what I said at all.
Send really nasty emails. Like you said it. So we're just gonna.
I think one thing we didn't discuss is, and I think you alluded to a little bit today, is understanding the other perspective. So clearly and very directly asking, like, why are you not approving this? Is there like a specific reason? And trying to understand the other person's thought process. Is it because they, think the test is not going to win? Or is it because they feel like there's not sufficient data? Having those very clear and direct and frank conversations can help you find some other ways to move forward together. Oftentimes, people are maybe afraid to speak up or afraid of confrontation, and that means that everyone will kind of be in the box and frustrated with the role or what they're able to do or not able to do. So be straight up with the people, make sure that everyone kind of gets their voices heard and try to find a way to move forward. But this talk has been a little bit, I wouldn't say on the negative side, but we have talked a lot about frustrations. I just want to end this up by saying that if this is a frustration you have, then you are not alone. Don't worry. We all face this from time to time, and that there are ways forward.
100%. There are tactical things you could do. If you're not getting tests approved, it can be extremely frustrating. And I think it's a sensitive topic of like, you're in a spot where you're frustrated because you're being blueballed. You're like, I am hired to run all the tests. Why aren't you letting me run any of them? There are still opportunities for you to do it. We talked about setting a clear DAISY or a RICE or accountability, conducting workshops and getting them involved in it. That could also include maybe a perception of maybe this is a waste of time, but in fact, you're going to waste far more time not doing the workshop and going through expensive meetings of just approvals and shit. I wanted to give you the opportunity to give Carlos's quote here because I think it's a good wrap for this as well.
Oh, it's an amazing quote. So Carlos Trujillo, my amazing co-worker, shared it on LinkedIn, I think a month or two ago. But he said, just a friendly reminder, in the 6 weeks your organization has spent perfecting that variant design, you could have already conducted a simpler test to determine if the effort was justified. And this quote resonates to me so much.
Carlos is definitely a man of smart words. Couple other things I'd say is just present confidence. I think that's something I uncovered through this conversation is you might not be getting the approvals for your test because you're not showcasing that confidence. You're not bringing it forward. I know it can be hard and it can be intimidating, but we are creatures at heart looking for as much confidence as we can in the decisions that we make. Honestly, most of the time, the stuff that we present is much higher confidence than half the shit anyone else has to present. So we should have that confidence. That also includes having very robust databases of tests and transparency. So it's not me and my best practices. It's our program of insights and optimization and testing. Yeah, and I think just alignment, conduct the workshops. I think these are all just super tactical things. If you want to geek out a little bit more on the workshops themselves, go check out Gertrud's Experimentation talk. It was fantastic. I kind of want to run that workshop on my own, and I probably will. So Gertrud's Experimentation topic was a beautiful way to like tactically run that workshop with photos, which I won't do it justice on a podcast while you're listening to Voices of Me. So go check it out. I'll plug a link to her talk in the description. Gertrud, anything else you want to plug?
Last comment, everyone, please drop a comment of their success rates for getting ideas approved. I'm very curious to see
your test approval rates. And if anyone is at 100%,
we don't believe you.
Why are you lying? Why you lie? Cool. Gertrud, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Certified Badass at Spiro. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to join us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.